All right, everybody. Well, welcome to Just Steve. I'm just hanging out here again. And today I have found yet another interesting person to talk with. His name is Fedor Holz. And I've gotten to know Fedor just a little bit through my poker world. He's a former #1 poker player worldwide. He's a college dropout, but he's also on the Forbes 30 under 30 list. He's a founder, he's an investor, he's a speaker. And let's welcome in Fedor Holz. Fedor, where are you joining us from?
Hi, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm based in Vienna in Austria.
Yeah, no, we've connected a little bit. Now, one of the things that I just loved about our conversation, we were going to talk poker, but we ended up talking about life and perspectives on life. And so when people read your bio, it's so diverse, it's so interesting. But how would you actually describe yourself? If somebody said, okay, who are you? I've never heard of you. Who are you? What do you do? How do you occupy your time? How would you even describe it?
I'm a curious guy. I like to learn new things. I like to solve puzzles. So I like any type of games or, creating products, thinking about how to improve things. I'm quite a sensible person. So I have a good feeling for what's going on around me, how people feel and their emotions. I'm quite passionate about improving systems, or it's like, this is a pretty general term now, but like helping people figuring out how they can pursue their passion, or how to educational system, for example. I'm very passionate about improving these type of things that have a direct impact on our quality of life, or my quality of life, and the people around me. And these are a couple of things I think that
and those are, well, those characteristics. I totally agree. I totally understand that. Everything I've read, everything I've heard from you, there's both kind of this individual component to it, but there's also this systemic component that I hear in everything you're saying. Right? It's about helping individuals. It's about helping yourself live your best life. But it's this, to talk more about this idea of systemic change and why that's such an intriguing puzzle for you.
For me, it's basically the same. I think that's the difference that's settling in my mindset and my attitude, is that I think the well-being of one part of the system is equal to the well-being of the system itself. So that's why I care a lot about how do we organize ourselves, how do we make decisions, how what are the systems we operate in right now, what are the things we believe in or other people believe in, and how do we act. And I try to do that as much as I can from my individual standpoint. So how can I be as true to myself, as honest, as authentic as I can? And I'm realizing hey, wow, this makes me feel good. And that's why I'm really passionate about, I personally really like to teach other people. I really, when I feel someone else is growing or can grow, and I can help them do that, that's fulfilling me. That's very enjoyable for me. And so I think that's my personal underlying passion for that. And then systemic change is just that on a scale, right? Is so if we have a better educational system, on the one side, yes, I'm excited by thinking about, okay, how can we improve this? How can we learn from what we've done in the past, and how can we iterate and organically make it better? But then on the other end of the spectrum, it's okay, from learning from this, how can we then have the most impact we can? And that, I think, is mostly on a global or systemic level, and that's why I think this is a natural byproduct.
Are there any particular large systemic issues that you're hyper passionate about right now that you're really focusing in on?
I don't really see it so much as, okay, we have this and this and this and this issue. Mm-hmm. It's more for me that I think we all do better if each individual does better. So that's why I'm like, okay, if a lot of individuals have no proper shelter or not enough food or just not enough resources, like their basic needs are not met, then I think that's potential that would be better for all of us if they had that. And so for me, this is mostly just an idea of why should I have, like a larger house if more people don't have one? And so that's just, I think what's sinking in with me right now is like, hey, wait a second, the extra value I gain isn't really, like, it's not really big. It's not like, oh, if I have twice the size of a place, like my life is twice as good. It's not even close to that. It's more complicated most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why for me, this is just such a natural thing that I'm becoming more and more passionate about, because I'm experiencing it. I'm experiencing how I feel better when people around me feel better because they're more productive, they're happier. Like when other people develop things, like these are all things that I then profit from too, right? Like if we as a society are growing and smarter and healthier, then that's good for me too. And I think that's good for everyone. So that's in specific topics, to answer your question. I think I have a lot of curiosity around a variety of different topics, but from personal experience, probably learning and education is the topic that I'm most passionate about, because I enjoy it so much myself, but then also I feel like this individual part is so important. I think it's so important that individuals, each one has their own dynamic, their own experiences, their own life. And therefore, it's important to understand that we don't understand everyone. There's no one solution that fits all and where we're all thriving. Is like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to reduce a complex system to a one dimension of like, okay, now we have the perfect solution. Just everyone goes to school and learns this. Like nobody in his right mind would say like, oh yeah, that's the best we can do. It's like, it's a decent solution now, but like we can do better. Right. And I want to bring in more of that element of, now it doesn't have any of this. It doesn't have this, oh, we can do better. It's just like, oh, we do the same every year for the last, I don't know, decades.
Yeah, and I love that, because I think, you're a logical guy. I'm a logical guy. You hear things like, oh, 10% of the people this and 30% of the people this, and we think about it in terms of these numbers, and those can be true facts. But at the end of the day, all of those numbers represent individual, unique people, and I think it's easy to lose track of the uniqueness of the human being in the midst of all of those numbers. And just to put this into context, I know you sort of shy away from this side of it, but for those of you who don't know who Fedor Holz is, you're in your mid-20s. You've made more than $30 million playing poker. Crazy, great run of results, and that's put you in a position where you have the financial wherewithal to be able to sort of choose what you want to do, where you want to go. And obviously, I don't know all of your dynamics there, but you see on one side people that are very well off financially or have had very good success, or the world has sort of smiled upon them and bestowed on them great wealth. They take it one direction, and they sort of become consumed with themselves. They think more about, how can I build this empire? How can I, more about me? And you at this young age have sort of turned it on its ear and said, well, no, how can I give back? How can I actually take, these blessings, these benefits, and help my neighbor? Because not only does it help my neighbor, it helps me, it helps society. How do you reconcile those two things? Why do you think you've taken or are taking this path of benefiting society, whereas some others are taking a different path?
I want to clarify very specifically. I don't think I'm a saint or like more selfless than others.
Mm-hmm.
I just think I have a different equation of like how I just value things differently.
Okay.
So as I said before, I tried to say that specifically. I think I do better if others do better. Like I think my well-being is equal to the well-being of the system. This is a very, very important part. A lot of other people operate in the thought process of their well-being at the cost of another system, at the advantage of someone else.
Yep.
So that's just a different approach. It's like we both think about how can we do better, how can we, thrive. And I don't do this of like, hey, I want to suffer. No, I don't want to suffer. And give everything away and be totally selfless. I don't believe in this concept of selflessness. I think we all at the core are driven to survive and like equally like live as good as possible. But I just believe that I live the best if everyone else is living great too.
That's such a good point. And so I guess the question that thank you for clarifying that. That is good. So it's less about you sacrificing all of these things. It's more about you saying, well, my optimal value lies in an improved society and the betterment of all people. So I guess then the question is really, why do you think your value system, your sort of equation, your equation for optimizing, your fulfillment in life, why do you think your equation involves systemic improvement more than other people who are more, I guess, individualistic?
Mm-hmm. So I think the core of it is fear. Okay. So I think at the essence of what we talked about before is the fear of losing essential or not having access to be able to fulfill our basic needs. And I think this fear is at the core of the reason why we try to advantage ourselves at the cost of someone else or hoard, like possess as much as possible. It's basically this logical string of the more we possess, the more secure we are towards risk, right? So it's basically this idea of if I have 100 million in the bank, I'm more likely to survive than the person who has nothing in the bank. Basically that. Mm-hmm. And then that's a scale, right? So it's like, oh, if I have 100K more, I have more maybe later if I want to do XYZ, I can do it. I can buy a house if I want to, so I can fly if I want to. And it's this level of perceived security that's, I think, the main driver of the system is like this fear. It's driven by fear. It's like, what if, and very, very much consequences bound. And it's, I think, bringing life to a very limited dimension, because oftentimes the functionality is significantly less than what you think. So if you have 5 million, the reduction of risk is actually quite low. Like it significantly reduces your, like it's so much
the marginal return,
more equivalent to, for example, if you live healthier, if you do regular sports, like if you keep good social contacts, like this is so much more relevant than having $5 or $10 million in the bank. And like I think this again showcases for me like how much it's based on fear. It's like I can feel it too. It's not like I also, when I lose a lot of money, it's like, oh, what if it goes to zero? What if I lose that freedom? What if I don't have access to that anymore? And I think that's in contrast to the other side of things, which is the experience. Is my experience, for example, is I experience that more money doesn't really equal that. Is like the moment I had, so if I compare me having 50,000 euros and me having 5 million euros, is everything is bigger and I have more. I possess more. But in the functionality itself, almost nothing is different. I was still traveling freely. I had my own place that I lived in. I had enough food to eat in whatever quality I wanted, and it was all good. So now it's just a bigger place. And then I'm realizing with this experience, I'm realizing, hey, wow, wait a second, what I believed in before, that I need to make more money, that money like equals this security, that's a very relevant like success or money, however you want to call it. I was deconstructing this belief. I was like, okay, I learned this as a child. It's like, this is what I'm training for, is what I'm optimizing for. And now I'm learning, well, wait a second, it doesn't work. I don't experience it the same way. My experience is not at all like that. I still fear things. Like the fear isn't gone. And on the other hand, it's not, my life isn't like, all just positive and great, because it depends on other things.
That's so. I got like 12 questions that just came out of that comment that you made. But the last thing you said really has me intrigued, because I don't know if you and I have talked about this or not, but I talk quite a bit about deconstructing yourself from the default belief system that you're handed as a child, and maybe talk a little bit more about that, if you want, sort of, the default beliefs that you had, or how do you break free? Like I've had a number of people that I work with that are saying, I see it now. I get it now. I see that, everything I believe, everything I think was handed to me as a child. I took the job that I was supposed to do. I did this because I was supposed to do that. Society told me to do this. And, we have these constructs that we're just grounded in. And, some people get to the point where they say, I see it, but I don't know how to break free. So talk a little bit about, if you want, sort of the construct that you're under, but even more so, how does this start to happen where you can actually deconstruct that and start developing your own thought system based on what you internally feel?
Yeah. I think it's all, freedom is the thing that matters. It's what you're describing is how dependent you are on what you believe to be true. And what I believe to be true, what I experienced as a child was, for example, I experienced a lot of expectation. I felt like I should be a certain way. And it was difficult for me to differentiate between, or to clarify and position myself to define what I want, or to make my own sense making of like, hey, this is what I want. And so I was rather adapting to what other people wanted me to be. And so what these things would be that they wanted me to be, for example, were successful, obedient, performing in some way. And yeah, a lot of it was bound to performance. So it was this very clear scale of good and bad, and then being good rather than bad. And I got positive feedback when it was good on that scale, and negative when it was bad. And so that was a thing where I never internally thought this way. I adapted it. I still can feel how internally this is not resonating with me. I didn't, but I remember there were lots of examples where I was very curious in getting into things, and I also stopped a lot of things. And I got that feeling that I'm a failure because I'm not performing according to this idea of you have to stick to something and then you have to deliver in this area. And I'm like, that wasn't something that I know. I love getting into 50 different things, doing it for a couple hours and stopping. It's like what I would like to do. And then in chess, for example, that was a thing I really stuck with because I loved it and I got deeper into it. And then I did it for myself, kind of. I didn't have this, I want to become X, Y, Z. And I was like, I like this. Then I like it again. And I like it. And I like it. And I do it for hours and hours and hours. And then I did it for a couple 100 hours. And then I was playing German championships and state and da. And then in this, it started building expectation. Now everyone thought there was an opportunity. It's like, now, he's 9, like he needs a trainer, he needs a good team, and I was like, wait, I don't want to do this, and I don't want to do that. And then I went away from what I actually liked. So this is an example of how it manifested. And there are a couple beliefs, or lots of beliefs, that I built over that time that I'm, I think through reflection, looking at and going through that sense-making process again and experiencing, like through my experiences of like, how do I experience it? What do I feel about it? And then I can step by step let it go.
And maybe it was the same thing with poker too. Maybe, you liked it, so you did it, you had success, and then there's expectations that were heaped on you, and maybe that made it less enjoyable, or you got bored with it, or whatever that is. But I think for a lot of people, we reach that point where we say, okay, I'm just not enjoying this anymore. It could be life in the corporate world. It could be certain friendships and relationships. It could be a hobby. It could be all these different things, but you somehow, had the wherewithal, the intestinal fortitude, whatever it is, to say, you know what, I'm not going to be defined by that. I know the world thinks I'm crazy. Kind of like when I left the corporate world, people say you're crazy, maybe, but how did you actually take that step to say, I'm not going to allow the expectations of my family, my friends, the world, the poker publications, the chess publications, the trainers, to not, how am I going to actually have that freedom to actually do this thing versus just thinking I wish I was free?
Pain. Just enough pain, and then you change.
Okay, you got to unpack that a little bit. So you're saying just do it. You're saying just do it. I mean,
I'm saying I don't think there's this thing where you just magically do things and then they develop. I think there's an experience, and through experience, like through all the past experiences, I think you are in the situation and you're like the everything is all these experiences, they bundle in this moment basically. And my poker exit, for example, it wasn't like that I just sat there and then made a plan and strategically thought it through and I was like, no, this is the best for me right now. And then no, it was I felt pain. I wasn't happy. I felt empty. I was very inauthentic. I was doing something a lot that I just didn't really feel like doing, and I was questioning why I'm doing it. And then I realized, okay, hey, wait a second, there's something apparently that makes me do something that I don't want to do. And it's me. And so I was looking at that part of myself. Why am I causing myself pain? Why am I sabotaging myself? And then I'm like, I don't need to do that. And the moment I said that is like, okay, then I let it go. And letting it go includes, if it's gone, then for example, if I don't need to prove people that much anymore, prove myself, or like it's not, if I can let go of that thought of if I'm more successful then I'm worth more, then I don't play that much poker. Just easy as that. It was just like, okay, I let it go. And then it was like, okay, then I play maybe, once every blue moon or like a couple months.
I see you're back out there a little bit.
Sorry?
I see that you're back out there playing a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, look, so I want to keep digging a little bit deeper because I still think there's something more there for the folks that are listening, and maybe even for myself too. So you have this feeling that, okay, I'm not enjoying this anymore. And I do think we have a lot of people that are in that situation with their life, whether it's some element of their life that they're not enjoying anymore, and they're feeling the pain and they're feeling the discontentment, but they haven't yet taken that step to actually make the change. You've gotten to the point where you can say, well, I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to move on to the next thing in my life. I'm going to allow experience to be greater than the fear, right? That's sort of the phraseology that I'm hearing, is that it's the struggle between your life experience and enjoyment and this fear of not having enough, sort of this scarcity idea. But I think a lot of people are stuck in this trap of saying, yes, I know I'm not fulfilled. I know I'm struggling. I know it's killing me inside, but the fear is too great, or something is getting in the way of me actually taking that step of faith, I guess, to jump into the unknown and to overcome that. So how do you help people? And I know you do some coaching, but how do you help people get over that hump to say, you know what, it's worth the risk. It's worth taking that leap.
It's the second word, suppression. So I'm not great at suppressing things. And you feel pain and then you suppress it and then you feel less pain and then you can somehow deal with it. And there's people who are better at suppressing things and others who are worse. Some can suppress things for decades, and it's there and it feels number, and you don't feel that much anymore. You go to work like 10, 20 years, it's like you're not fulfilled, you don't enjoy it, but you feel less in general. You're just like, okay, the only way I can deal with this is like I just feel less everywhere. So I suppress how I feel myself, because if I would really feel myself, the pain would be too big. I would need to change. And I think that's when I work with myself, then it's always about letting go of that. So I'm also suppressing things. I'm suppressing memories, I'm emotions, like it's all the time. It's just this, I'm experiencing fear, and then I'm like, oh no, I don't want to look at this right now. And then I watch a series or TV or play computer games, and it's like, oh, I can, now I'm in this mode where I'm so distracted, I don't need to think about it. And then when I'm in a lonely moment, then it comes up again, and then it's like this. But then when I go into it, then I learn about myself, because this is a mechanism. It's like I'm telling myself something, right? Like it's so important that it's there. It's like, hey, wait a second, you're doing something, or I'm doing something that I'm not happy with. Like this is not in center. It's not balanced. It's not in line with who I am and where I want to go. And I mean, I don't have that figured out, but like there's something stronger in me, I think, that has this navigation, this orientation. And I think it's just about listening to that. It's about sitting down, and it's in totally different ways. It's talking to friends, it's meditating, it can be, like writing down things, taking your notes, doing a journal, going to therapy. Like all for me is the same thing. It's just reflecting and exploring yourself so that you are in better touch with yourself. And I think the moment, or like this is the progression, I think the progression of humanity is to constantly overcome that fear, let that fear go. And I think at the other end of the spectrum is absolute connection. That's how I see it.
I love that so much. So I like that you kind of called out those different ways that people can lean into this emotion, and that they're all valid. They're all kind of doing that same thing, whether it's journaling or seeing a coach or a therapist or whatever it is. It sounds like the idea is move past this suppression, move past this, just allowing yourself to feel bad, and lean into it and sort of ask those questions of what is causing this, what is driving this, and what does freedom look like on the other side of it. I love that message. I'm curious if you've seen, we're in the middle of this global pandemic, right?
Heard of it, yeah.
You've heard of it. You've so that has reached Europe. Okay, that's. I have a son who was in Paris. We just recently got him back home. It's been quite this ordeal, and I'm sure you've seen all kinds of things. I'm curious, as such a thinker, and this idea of trying to overcome fear to be more connected with yourself, more connected with others, to have the experience, your best life experience, whatever that looks like, and to improve society. How do you see this pandemic, operating in the world that you're talking about, this world of trying to overcome fear, to try to live our best lives or to improve society in a systematic way?
I think it's funny, because I think it's always the same process. I think we as humans, we go through, or like at least I experience always the same thing, is we have an illusion of certainty, we experience, and then we realize it's an illusion, and then we build the next illusion. And this for me is the same thing, is this illusion in, you can see it everywhere. You can see it how the stock market is pricing, like volatility index prices at 9.5. It's just, oh, there's nothing, like this is all going to continue like this. Stocks are just going to go straight up, like there. And then there's this high level of certainty around the future, and it's based on past experiences that aren't even, like, they don't even take it, like, it's so biased. It's basically, you look at the past 10 years and you say like, oh yeah, it's been mainly going up the past 10 years, instead of looking at the like, let's
start after 2009. Let's look at it since then, right?
The first thing is obviously longer stretches than that, but the second thing is also in these stretches, there's like nothing that we can predict on a global scale. If you try to predict the next 5 years, like it's, if you do it a bit more complex rather than on very one-dimensional things, impossible. And I think we're constantly in this trap of overestimating how much of a grasp we have of life. And
go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say, I mean, do you think we overestimate that because we want that so much? We want to feel like there's this overarching, controlling, some people find it in religion, some people find it other places, but we want so much to believe that there's this overarching positive control of the universe. And so when we see a stable stock market, we grab hold of that. When we see, financial security, we grab hold of that. Because we want that so bad. Do you think that's what's driving it?
So it's great because I think now this is a great example of what I meant before with experience. So let's take the stock market. The stock market is a design by human. Okay, so it's something a system we shaped, a limited, finite, designed environment. And as you said, we look at the system and we search for security in the system. And then on the other hand is the experience. And we neglect the experience. So we find certainty in the system that we created that is based on our rules rather than looking at the underlying rules. For example, if we look at our development of knowledge, we would know throughout our decades of life and tens of thousands of years of existence that it's ever evolving. There's always new things that we're learning. I don't think we will get to a point where we'll be like, oh, got it all figured out. We know how it all works. So my point is, why do we believe that we're ever at a point where we got it figured out? Why do we believe that we look at a system that we designed based on our limited knowledge and say, this is the truth? Can people imagine how world looks with past a stock market, past governments, past states, it's for sure going to happen. It's like, there's no way this is the best we can come up with. There's no way we will not gain new knowledge, not learn new things and develop better things, because I look at them and I can see inefficiencies. Everyone can see inefficiencies. You can look at it and you can see, oh, you could do this better, you could do that better, you could do this better. But we're scared to take that step because how does this world look? How does this step beyond? We have a stock market, we have states, we have governments, we have a president. How does that look? And how does it work? But if I could place a bet, if in 100 years we still operate with the dollar on paper money, and I was like, come on, who thinks that? So I think there's a big contradictory between the experience of life and the complexity of life and the certainty we base on our design very limited models.
So as you look back on the history of humanity, the history of the world, do you see it as a regression upward? Do you see it as a positive sort of continual movements, kind of like the stock market in a sense, where every event, every generation has these ups and downs, and there's a lot of volatility, but over the long haul, society as a whole, use that term loosely, has been improving and will continue to improve? Is that one of your constructs?
Yes, I think the outcome is unknown. But I think there is a direction and there is some level of dynamic. And I think, again, what we have to, or for me, it's, I'm also constantly getting lost in this idea of, oh, I have it figured out. I'm just trying. What I'm saying is I think we're certainty level, 60, and we should be almost 0. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's not like, oh, what should I eat today? What did I? It's more that we don't have things figured out, and that's okay. We try our best, right? Just because we understand that we don't have it figured out doesn't mean we don't do stuff anymore. I don't think we've ever reached a point where it's like, this is it. I just don't believe that. But that doesn't mean that we can't do this for now. We can operate with the stock market, with democracy, with states, with governments, with presidents, and so on. But I think keeping in mind that, hey, this is not going to stay like this forever, because we're going to come up with smarter things, and we got to evolve this. We can improve this. But there's a lot of people who then profit individually from it in this moment, who say no, and they resist to that. And they're like, no, we input energy to sustain it. And I think that at some point leads to implosion. Because if you try to sustain, it's like energy you put in, but it needs to go out at some point.
Right.
There's nothing that can infinitely store energy. So that's how I see, I think, the world.
When I think even accepting, saying this is as good as it gets, or this is the best we can do, even just sort of that mentality becomes a limiting piece. There's folks like you and folks like others that are saying this isn't the best that we can do. We can keep progressing our perspectives. We can keep progressing the world. But if we're stuck on this is as good as it gets, that becomes a limiting behavior. And like you said, the energy is all focused then on sustaining what we have versus put toward advancing in some positive direction. Yeah. I'm curious a little bit about, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about this just because I'm so curious about this idea of the primed mind. Talk a little bit about what is this deal? What do you got going out there in Vienna? Like, talk about this thing. I'm so intrigued by this.
So after I quit poker in 2016, I founded a company with 3 of my friends, and it was basically we didn't really know what to build. We were just like, we want to build something together. And we're brainstorming about what are the most valuable things that we experience that we would like to share with others. And one thing that came up with was Elliot's coaching. Because I've worked with Elliot. He's a mindset coach.
Elliot Rowe. We're talking about Elliot Rowe.
Yeah.
Yep.
For about 5 years, and very benefited from the reflection with him and his perspective and the work he does. And so we created an app that resembles that. So it's his voice, his knowledge, his experience in that app, and you can access that for free. And that was the core idea of it. So Prime Mind is basically a in-pocket mindset coach that for lots of different areas, like exams, if you can't sleep, just starting your day, if you're a trader, if you're a poker player, if you want to do it for sports, like we created these theme-oriented performance improving MP3s that basically prime you to perform better.
Yeah, and we're going to have him on the show as well to kind of talk a little bit more about that. Yeah. We've had him on the Rec Poker podcast. Now we're going to get him on Just Steve and just kind of talk about life application beyond poker. And so, yeah, primed mind, and then there's this primed group idea. So talk a little bit about the expansion of that.
Yeah. So basically, I'm not so connected to the branding, but the idea was in the beginning, like 4 years ago, we had this genius idea to build different products. So we've always been excited about different things. We all had different interests and different curiosities. And I think it was clear from the beginning of like, oh, we're not going to just build one thing. We want to like expand that and build multiple things. And so, that was basically the start of it, of, hey, let's build a team to build multiple companies, kind of like a company builder. And then I invested and raised some money, and then we basically built multiple companies and invested in multiple companies. And Prime Group is the holding that we ran all this under. So yeah, that was
So
what we.
what is it about that idea? What is it? Okay, so you're, I'm picturing you and you're kind of smiling as you're thinking about, me and these three other people or these four other people, we started this thing and now we're building companies. And so how does that fit into kind of your life perspective? What's exciting about that? Why does this feel like this is sort of your best life right now? Talk a little bit about connecting
Yeah.
this business side of it, which sounds all strategic and thing, and this idea of I just want to be free to be who I am and live the kind of life that I want to live and try to advance society.
Yeah, I think that was the clash in some way of. So I didn't really know what to do. It was more like, hey, this I'm excited about, so I get into this, and then this I would like to participate in. And so I think that was the core of it. Is I tried pretty hard to find a way, a vessel to do that. And now in hindsight, I would give myself way more space and it doesn't need this vessel. It doesn't need this clear, it's like, oh, this is a company builder. Like we have this and this, we have this agenda, we have this website, we have this plan, we have this strategy, these values, da 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 da. Like now I'm on a totally different path. Like this is what I've learned kind of from, I was like, your company, you got to do this and this and this. And now it's more like, what I like is just building things that I'm passionate about, or just if I'm interested in something, I like to learn about it, or I like to contribute in some way. And it doesn't need this transaction. I don't need something in return. It's like, I just do it like, hey, I want to help there, or help you, or do that. And that's why also I'm turning to other things now, because I was realizing like, hey, I don't want to be an angel investor. I don't want to be a VC. I don't want to build a blueprint company builder. Because why? Like I was kind of losing the reason why I was doing it. It was like in the first place, it was always like, hey, something like person that I find inspiring, that I think I can contribute to, I want to contribute. Topic that I find really interesting, I want to learn about it. This is all I wanted. Investing in something to then own a percentage, to then that was a thing I did, but it was like, oh, this is what I'm passionate about. And so there was this conflict of, I didn't really understand, I didn't listen enough to myself. And I thought I needed to be something. I thought I needed to build something. And I was realizing through the experience that I don't need to, and I can just do the things that I enjoy without needing the other thing.
Well, and something you said earlier, you kind of like to get involved in something and throw yourself into it and build it and do it and get involved, and then at some point you might lose interest and kind of move on to the next thing. So is that part of the consideration as you're talking about quote unquote building companies? Is you need to either surround yourself with the right people that are maintainers and managers, or do those sorts of things that are just that will just be for a finite period of time, because there's a very good chance you might want to move on to something else in the near future.
Yeah, but it's also this, yes, for sure. But then it's, why do you need the managers? Like, that's the thing. It was like, because you want to sustain it, you want to make money with it. It was like, a lot of this I don't really care about. So right. I think it's then when there's clash of interest, where if I'm just interested about learning and building something there, and others are interested in making as much money with this as they can, then there's a clash of interest. And we have then they're disappointed if I say like, hey, okay, now I've learned enough, or like I'm not interested anymore. Then it's like, oh, but to make money we need to push, another 2-3 years. I'm like, okay, but so I think it's always very important to talk a lot about what your expectations are, or explore each other and connect as well, so that you have a grasp for why you do something.
Yeah, we talk about this all the time, even in like personal coaching I do and with other interviews, is how critical it is to really understand your core objective, what you're ultimately trying to do. And that's what I'm hearing you say, is that, okay, you and somebody else could both be passionate about creating this widget, but you're passionate about it because I just want to learn. I just want to dig in. I just want to understand. And somebody else is saying, I'm passionate about it because I think there's a market opportunity to monetize this and to make some good cash flow. And, and on some levels you might say, oh, well, that's going to work out well because Fedor can get really involved and learn it and grow it and then hand it off. And this person can take it and run with it and make money off of it. So in some ways you look and say, oh, that's a good match. But at the core, when your core objectives are so radically different, that's bound to cause tension and disagreement and upheaval, right?
I think you can't be passionate about the market opportunity.
Right. But some people are, right? I think they are. You don't think they are? You think there's something different going on there?
Yeah, I think I can sense it with myself too. Like, I think with passion, there's very little. For me, passion is intrinsic internal motivation. I think a market opportunity is always external motivation. It's like, because I mean, let's define it as I could make a lot of money with this. I have that sometimes too. I was like, oh wow, I could, do that. And then I'm realizing like, wait a second, why am I excited by it?
Right. That's the internal passion, is the why, right?
So, and I think that's really important to, for example, soccer. I'm really passionate about it. I like, when I play it, it's just like, I don't think about it. I don't think about what I get from it. It's just me and other players and the ball. And it's just, I don't care about what happens outside, who thinks about it, whatever. And if there's not so many things I have this with, and the more I think, the less passion I have involved. So it's more like when I'm thinking, it's like, oh, and what's my incentive, and what do I get from it, and what do I get? And it's like, okay, then it's already gone.
So it sort of becomes that question of why thing. Okay, so if you're motivated, or you feel like you're motivated by the market opportunity, the question is, like you said, well, why? Why are you motivated by that? Well, is it because you really want to feel like you matter in the world, or or what is it? You want the freedom to be able to go on vacations. There's usually something there, and then there's usually the next question, right? You ask why about that, and keep asking why until you can't ask why anymore. And I think that's a great delineation that you've made there. So as people are thinking, okay, I like how this guy's thinking, how do they connect with you? How can they hear more from Fedor? Whether it's, I know you got some videos out there, or you got the website, or they just kind of want to stay plugged in so they're aware of things that you're working on, if that's even something you offer. Just kind of, how do people connect with you?
I'm figuring out right now how I'm going to communicate in the future, because also there I've made the experience. I don't want to build the Fedor brand and then Fedor. Like Fedor's here, and then I have this brand that I communicate.
Yeah, love it.
This, and this, and this. But it's more like, hey, wait a second. Like, there is no Fedor brand. It's like Fedor, and Fedor communicates. And so it should exactly the same way I would communicate things. I don't want to put on a different voice when I record a video. Like, I don't want to do stuff that I wouldn't do when I record a video. Or I don't want to say things that I don't want to say. And that's basically, it's like, then that also means like, hey, if I don't want to put out a video, if I don't want to post content, then I don't post content. And so I'm figuring out that right now of like, okay, what do I want there? And how can I tap into that? And then how does that look like later, the process and the experience then? So I'm more and more withdrawn from social media. But you can find me on Instagram at Fedor Holz. I post there sometimes, and then on Twitter I'm somewhat active at CrownUpGuy, my star screen name.
Yep. Yes, that was his online poker name. Yeah,
exactly. So that's mostly it. But generally, if you try to find me, I'm easy to find.
Yeah, that is true. And if you have trouble finding him, reach out to me. I can help find him for you. But you don't even know this. But like we touched on this a little bit, what you just shared. We touched on this when I interviewed you for the poker podcast, this idea of the brand versus your own personal piece. And that spoke to me quite a bit. And I've actually, because I left the corporate world like 18 months ago or so, and I've been trying to build my quote unquote brand as a speaker and a coach and all these things. And I fell into the same sort of struggle that you did. And so that's where I just kind of been stripping it away and just like, I'm Steve on Facebook, I'm Steve on Instagram, whatever, Steve on Twitter. I don't have, all of these different brands that are out there. And even to the point where this podcast is called Just Steve. And the big part of that is thoughts that were provoked from our conversation where it's just Steve. That's really what this means is like the podcast, it's just Steve. I'm just here talking. It's not, oh, here's some big fancy name for the podcast, or it's not big professionally done. And I'm not going to send you 12 questions in advance. It's just it's just me. It's just because that's who I am. And I do credit you for that. And it's been very freeing to think about it in terms of what do I have to share with the world as just me versus what sort of brand can I create that's going to hit my target market right between the eyes.
I love it. I appreciate what you do.
Yeah, so you made an impact on me more than you realize. I think that's where I know you're trying to do things that personally inspire you. But the reason I ask people how they can connect with you is because you are inspiring. You even at your young age, you've developed this sort of perspective on the world that I think a lot of people are hungry for. And so whether you like it or not, people are saying, oh, I want to think more like Fedor. I want to get that perspective. I want to realize where I'm caught up in fear versus fighting for my own freedom. And so, you don't need to take on the pressure of that responsibility. But to the extent that you're actually are communicating things, I think that's where people do want to plug into that. Because it is inspiring and motivating. And again, I don't want you to feel the pressure of that, but as long as you're communicating that, I think people can really benefit from it.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, I'm gonna close up here quick and come back to you. If you have a favorite quote or if you have final words for our audience, we'll have you share that here. But just a word to you guys out there. If you like what you're hearing, I do have a Patreon account, patreon.com/Steve Fredland. That's really a way that you can support the creative things that I'm doing, like the podcast and the videos from Rwanda and some of these other fun things that you see out there. But feel free to connect with me. I do have a website, stevefredland.com. There's a newsletter. And like Fedor, I've kind of got my Twitter and Facebook and Instagram out there where I just post stuff that's just me. It's just stuff from my heart. So I'd love to have you connect with me out there as well. But let's turn back to Fedor to close us off for today.
I think I had this Henry Ford, I think it was him, it's probably attributed to him, but I had this when I was 21 and started to play high stakes poker. I had this life goal, like Excel sheets, and I was writing down my goals and what I wanted to achieve. And up top, I had this big thing: whether you think you can do it or you think you can't, you're right. And for me at that time, that was very powerful because I think I was sabotaging myself a lot to not to doubt myself or to limit myself. And that's why this is a very powerful statement for me. And I would pass that forward because I think whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Fedor. This is fantastic. Appreciate your time. Best of luck out in Vienna there, and stay safe. And thank you for the positive impact you've had in my life and in the life of the people that have heard about you through me.
Have a wonderful day.